A big Thursday welcome into lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream, broadcasting over the course of 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time on Facebook Live. You can find us archived on all of our channels. You can find us on youtube.com/lcpios, connecting you with student athletes, coaches, different members from our alumni base, and across the entire Lewis and Clark College campus. Thanks for being here with us. I am Ryan Goff. I am the play-by-play voice and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark College. We are the Pioneers out of Portland, Oregon, and a member of the Northwest Conference, a 9-team institution conference spanning the state of Washington and Northwest Oregon, and competing with 19 intercollegiate athletics programs at the NCAA Division III level, a chance for our student athletes to go all over the country and get an opportunity to compete at the NCAA level. Plus, with a very robust overseas study program, a chance for our student athletes to go experience the world with experiential liberal arts education. It truly is an awesome opportunity just 6 miles southwest of downtown Portland, Oregon. We will talk today with senior running back Michael Abraham. We'll talk to him about the Lewis and Clark football program, some of the things that he's seen in his 2 prior years with the program. Head coach Jay Losey continuing to lead Lewis and Clark to a 4-win season last year, doubling the win total of the 2 prior, and just seeing the building blocks of this program and kind of that return that Coach Losey had talked about when he took over the program, now entering his 6th year. We'll talk to Michael about also having the opportunity to compete in his hometown, as he's originally from Portland. So we'll do that in a few moments. Do invite you to get connected with us on Facebook Live with the comments below. You can also email us anytime at sports@lclark.edu. Whether you have a question for an upcoming guest or maybe you have a suggestion for a future guest, we certainly welcome those. You can find us also on Twitter and Instagram at both those locations, Instagram and Twitter, LC Pioneers on both. Big announcement yesterday on our website, I think actually Tuesday morning, the announcement of the class of 2020 for the Lewis and Clark Athletics Hall of Fame, and that includes 6 individual inductees, 2 more individuals going in for lifetime achievement or meritorious service, as well as the 1993-94 men's basketball program. So pretty excited to induct that group into the Lewis and Clark Athletics Hall of Fame, and also very excited to do so in person as soon as we possibly can. Planning on something with the pandemic still in full effect, something that we still have to figure out exactly when that's going to happen, but excited for it as soon as it possibly can happen. Go to lcpioneers.com to read about that right now. Also, our YouTube continuing to be updated. Yesterday, we had Dr. Kaylee McCauley on the show, so a chance to talk to her about student support services and some of the other things that she supplies the Lewis and Clark student body. We did that yesterday on lcpioneers.com live. So stick around with us. When we come back, we'll talk to Michael Abraham, senior running back for Lewis and Clark football. I'll have a chance to chat with him about what things are looking like right now in the fall 2020 semester. That's about 4 weeks into the year, and see what he's looking forward to as soon as competition can return to the field. We'll do that next when we come back on lcpioneers.com live.
We invite you to join us.
It's time to explore Lewis and Clark.
Welcome back to lcpioneers.com live. I'm Ryan Goff, and let's bring in our guest for today, a returning senior for Lewis and Clark football, a chance to talk to Michael Abraham on the show today. Michael, appreciate taking the time to join us on this Thursday. Fall, as I mentioned, fall 2020 is underway, and with no competition right now for Lewis and Clark athletics, I know it's not necessarily exactly how it usually is. So let's start there. How are things going for you? What's the fall looked like so far?
Well, first, thanks for having me. And the fall's been weird so far. It's definitely an adjustment for everybody, getting used to the new policies. And also it's like kind of weird having like half our team here and then like half not here. So it's definitely just been like an adjustment period, getting used to how things are and trying to make things work how they are.
Now, what are you doing in terms of classes? Are you on campus right now? Is that something that you had considered staying off campus completely? Kind of walk us through the options and what you ultimately chose.
Okay, so at the beginning of the semester, they gave us the option to go fully online or in person, and I chose to go in person so I could still use all the athletic facilities and the field and all that. But unfortunately, three of my classes got moved to online, and one of them is like a hybrid form, so it's half online, half in person. So that's what I'm doing right now. A lot of back and forth between home and school.
Well, we certainly uh, commend the students who have had to try to adjust on the fly, not only in the fall, but also in the spring. And so let's kind of talk about football specifically. Spring practice didn't happen because of the pandemic by and large. And then now fall practices kind of give us an idea of what you're able to do with your team so far when you're on campus. What's the last two, I guess, sessions of practice been like last spring and this fall?
Okay, well, yeah, last spring I was abroad, so I wasn't here for the whole crazy first part of the pandemic. But so far this fall, it's been a little different. We can only basically have like I think 14 balls on the field at a time. So it's like each position that is gonna touch a ball or catch a ball or get a ball handed off has to have their own ball that they can't share with anybody else. So you're not spreading the germs that way. The weight room wise, we have set I think four time slots throughout the day where we have time blocked out for football players to lift because we can't have our whole team in the weight room at once. And on the field, our O linemen have to have like 6 foot, 7 foot wide splits because you have to have the social distance on the field. We're wearing masks at practice, and yeah, just not a lot of like real football play going on. It seems like it's like an adjustment, but we're still getting it in.
Well, we give you tons of credit for persevering so far through all of the changes. We're talking to Michael Abraham, senior running back for Lewis and Clark football. And you mentioned last spring, especially being overseas. Describe what program you had chosen and why you wanted to do it. Then also, kind of the end result with the pandemic hitting in the middle of the spring semester. What kind of toll did that take on you?
So I definitely knew I wanted to go abroad, like before I even came to Lewis and Clark. Like that was something I always wanted to do in like high school. So when I had the chance to go abroad, I was looking at all the programs and the cities that we're in, and I saw that there was one in London. Then I really wanted to see London, so I chose a fine arts program in London. And when I arrived in January, the coronavirus had just started, but it was kind of not a big deal yet. And then fast forward 2, 3 months, and then March comes around, and I got sent home like a month early, right before Trump put like a travel ban from the UK. So I made it out just in time.
Did you have an opportunity to kind of explore some of London before everything? What was the most memorable part of your briefer experience?
Um, yeah, I saw a lot of London. And I think the most memorable part was getting to travel to Amsterdam and Paris. Those were two of my favorite cities that I got to see. Well, like because I stayed in London a lot, so I got to see a lot of London. But like seeing other cities was really cool to me.
Yeah, that's a really neat opportunity. And now, we talk about being at Lewis and Clark. As I mentioned at the top, this is in your hometown. You're from Portland, but didn't choose Lewis and Clark originally. So, kind of give us the origin story for you. Why ultimately did you get to Lewis and Clark?
Okay, so it started with my senior year, me being stubborn, my dad telling me how great of an option Lewis and Clark was and how close it was. He can come to all my games, and I can still be kind of far away from home, but still close. And then me being hard headed and being like, no, I want to get far away from you, far away from my family. Take me to California. So I was originally going to go to Redlands, and then I got down there and absolutely just hated it. I don't know if it was the team or just the players, the coaches. Like I wasn't sure what it was, but I did not like it. So I think after 2 weeks of being there, I decided to pack up and come to Lewis and Clark. And when I did, it was right before fall camp started. So I called up Coach Losi. I'd already gotten accepted, but I was like, Coach, listen, like I really changed my mind. It's last minute. Do you think you could help me out? Blah blah blah. And he was like, Yeah, we got you. Come on up. So I came up, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and then you've been, big reason why Lewis and Clark has had some success. As I mentioned with Coach Losi now in the sixth season, we'll go from two wins, now 4 wins in the last season, and competitive certainly in every game. You were a big part. I mean, let's start with the first year you're here. all Northwest Conference unanimous selection. Led Lewis and Clark in the Northwest Conference in a lot of the statistical categories. What was it about that all Northwest Conference first team season that really stood out to you?
Um, I think personally for me, I wanted to come in and be like, okay, I don't like that everyone's not used to not winning, but they're kind of expect to not win. I want to change that mindset. I want us to be competitive, and I want us to think that we can win every game. And I definitely think that since my freshman year to now, that's been a huge area of growth of our team. Is like not being complacent and not being like satisfied with winning one or two games, but like really trying to win it all out, win the conference.
Yeah, and I mean, among the league leaders, as I mentioned, last year in All Northwest Conference second team selection, and like I said, the four wins. What was kind of a standout moment last year when you look at some of the ways that your team was able to put together such a great season?
Oh, the biggest standout moment has to be the last game of the season against Puget Sound. We went in just full guns blazing, like we knew we could win from the beginning, and we played like that. And I think that's one of the like our best overall games. Speaking, so we didn't play well just in the first quarter or just in the second quarter. We played well from the first quarter all the way to the fourth, and just like really, I don't know, really played as a team. Like when things got rough, we just built each other back up and then kept pushing. And I just think we played all together as a team really well that game, and like saw how much potential we had. And it was cool to end the season on that because then we could look forward like, all right, this is what we ended like. Let's start even better the next year.
Yeah, the end of the season. I mean, what a key moment with Puget Sound and such standout moments. I think of Junior picking up 3 interceptions and tying a school record. And it seems like this team has a tremendous playmaking ability with you in the backfield and a lot of your fellow running backs. Aiden on the outside. I mean, you guys had weapons in so many places. I'm going to say the word explosive, but how do you describe some of the pieces of your offense and certainly the team as a whole?
I would say definitely explosive and definitely versatile. Like a lot of our players that are really skilled can play in different positions and run different types of players, if that makes sense. Like our players are really versatile, so we can move them inside, outside, backfield, put me on the outside. So I think that's like helps a lot with having teams to stop us because it's like you can stop the pass, but then we have run. But then you can stop the pass. We also have a really good run game, and you could target this guy, but we also have that really good guy. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a team that like you mentioned has weapons all over the place, and excited for what this upcoming year will look like. How tough is it to go into the fall and not have competition? I assume you've been playing football for so long; it's got to be just an odd feeling to have September and October on the calendar and there's no games.
Oh, it's so weird. This is like the first fall in probably like 15, like 13 years where I haven't had like a football game in the fall or like padded practice. And it's definitely an adjustment. Like the first 2 weeks of school felt like so weird because we didn't even have any kind of football yet. So it was just go to school, go home, go to school, go home. And that was it.
We're talking to Michael Abraham, a 3-time All Northwest Conference selection on lcpioneers.com live. We're live on Facebook Live Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, and available to watch on demand at youtube.com/lcpios. I mentioned that all Northwest Conference first team selection and said it's first year, and obviously misspoke there. But now you have Coach Bushman, right, as the offensive coordinator. And some of the key things that I noticed from the year prior to his arrival to now is just a lot more spread, a lot more movement. It seems just like a faster pace. What was the adjustment getting used to running his offense?
Definitely the conditioning. Like he told us, so he'd come in the spring of my sophomore year. So we had the whole spring with him. And he was basically saying, when you come back to fall camp, be in the best shape of your life, be ready to run. We're a fast moving offense, no huddle. So that was definitely one of the biggest differences from Coach Parker previously. We had slower paced, huddled offense, but this time it was with Coach Bushman, it's more fast paced, explosive, like you said, and just like kind of like wearing out our opponents. And like by the end of the game, we want to be in better shape than our opponents. So when we get to the end, crunch time, we're not tired and they are.
Now you have had the opportunity to hoist the Wagon Wheel Trophy, and it had been a long time since I've been back to Lewis and Clark, and now it's kind of been Lewis and Clark's to keep. Describe what the Wagon Wheel is for those who don't know, but more importantly, what is it like to have a chance to compete for something that's pretty unique? I mean, there's not many trophies out there that are gigantic wagon wheel.
Okay, yeah. So the wagon wheel is like our rival game against Willamette every year, and yeah, it's been pretty cool to be able to hold that for the last 3 years. Uh, yeah, I don't know. It's just like it's a really special game. One, because before I even got there, they always told us, "Oh, we haven't won the wagon wheel before. It's our rival game." Like, so I already had motivation to win it. And now, since our a few of our coaches actually left and went to Willamette, it makes it even more of a rival game. Now we're like, "Oh, we're gonna show them. We're gonna win."
Yeah, you referenced Coach Parker before, and obviously a former offensive coordinator, now the head coach at Willamette. But you also pointed out, the amount of coaches too that transferred with him at the time. You build a staff that way, right? You build, relationships with people at your current stop, and you bring them along for your next stop. And we've seen pieces of that with Coach Losing, the way that he's assembled his staff too, which has been
Mm-hmm.
pretty neat. Let's take a step off the field and look at academics. Rhetoric and media studies is your major. What ultimately led you to picking that as your degree program?
So when I first came in, I was not sure what I wanted to major in, and I took a Rhetoric 100 class with Kundai, and I just fell in love with like the topic and him as a teacher. And so then I continued taking another class the next semester with him, and continued just to love him as a teacher, and I loved the stuff we were learning. So then decided that was what I wanted to do.
As you mentioned that class specifically, what have been some of the highlights from a class perspective? Some that have really stood out.
Definitely just like learning how people use language and like the different methods and kind of like practices you see. And it's cool because you learn about like Aristotle and Socrates and all them, but then you see how what they're talking about plays into Donald Trump speeches or like people that are speaking to today's times.
Now, let's talk about the future. Have you decided post graduation what your plan is, or kind of a ballpark idea?
I've had a ballpark idea, so I'm thinking law school, but I haven't taken LSAT, so I don't even know if I'm going to get in. But law school, maybe somewhere in marketing or like public affairs.
What is it about that kind of line of work that at least initially excites you?
Yeah, I'm definitely like a people person, and I like talking to people and forming relationships, and I feel like that's a big part of like public affairs.
Yeah, it'll be neat to see how it plays out. Good luck, no matter what direction it goes. Most unique way that you've found a workout. We were talking at the top, right? Everything's different this year with practice. The wildfires came through, so for the air quality to be so poor over the summertime with the pandemic in full force and people, not able to go to gyms and whatnot. What's the most unique workout you had to find yourself doing in order to stay in shape?
The most unique workout, I think one day I filled up one of my backpacks with a bunch of stuff I could find around my house, shoes and books. And I did back squats with them because I could not think of anything else.
Resourcefulness, right? Yeah, you got to have the resourcefulness and figure it out in unprecedented times for sure. Hey, Michael, I can't wait to see you and your team back on the field as soon as possible, but I definitely appreciate you taking time to join us today on lcpioneers.com live.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Michael Abraham, our guest today. Fun conversation and excited for them to get back on the field, like I mentioned. We've talked about this with many of our programs and some of the coaches that we've had on, as well as the student athletes, about the difficulties with spring being halted, but now with fall practices being either limited or not as in depth as you would like because of the pandemic, and then competition having been suspended by the Northwest Conference till at least January 1st, 2020. All of that has led to situations where you're not able to get as much growth maybe as you had planned with teams. And I know that as exciting as last fall was, that was an area that I think all of our fall programs were certainly eager to get back onto the field, but it's impacted all of our programs now as we've talked to some of the spring programs, just not being able to get those extra, it's about a month and a half that was lost by the time that the pandemic canceled things in mid-March. That's a lot of developmental time. And so I know that the coaches and the student athletes are super excited when things can get back to normal as quickly as possible, but are making do with what they are able to do right now. And Michael talking about filling up anything he could find and putting in the backpack to do the squats. Pretty good story right there. Tomorrow we'll talk women's golf with Olivia Weaver, rising junior, or now in her junior year, I should say, for Lewis and Clark. Get a chance to see what it's like to be a member of the women's golf program. And then, as I mentioned on yesterday's show, excited to talk to her because she's from Illinois. And so a perspective to get an idea of why she ended up choosing Lewis and Clark, how she found out about Lewis and Clark, and much like our student athlete base, somewhat at large. I mean, we have student athletes from all over the country, and so another opportunity to talk to someone who picked Lewis and Clark from a little bit more afar. And then we'll talk to one of the best runners in Lewis and Clark men's history. Carl Dickman will join us on Tuesday. Jalen Hodges from women's rowing, a current student athlete for the Pioneers, will join us on Wednesday, and we'll continue to add to our guest list, try to give you the full lineup next week as soon as we can with tomorrow's show. So until we talk to you again tomorrow, big thanks to Michael Abraham for joining us and sharing some stories. Big thanks to you for watching. I'm Ryan Goff. You can find all of our shows archived at youtube.com/LCPios. In case you missed any of this interview or any of our past shows, you can watch them on demand there. And we'll see you again tomorrow for more lcpioneers.com live, streaming live on Facebook. You can find us Tuesday through Friday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Until then, goodbye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
My favorite spot on campus is like right outside the Dovecote, little benches, and there's flowers growing there, and you can get a little coffee at the Dovecote and sit there.
My favorite spot on campus is definitely the weight room. I get that everybody loves like the gardens or the manor house, but our facilities for athletics here are actually amazing too, and the weight room is definitely my favorite spot.
My favorite spot on campus would either be the glade outside of the athletic facilities or South Campus.
What is my favorite spot on campus? I really like the back porch of the manor house. It looks out on Mount Hood, and on a clear day, it's super beautiful just to sit around with friends.
I'm Casey Jones, and I teach a range of classes: general chemistry, organic chemistry, and also some advanced classes. And I have a research lab that currently I have 4 students working with me as part of the Rogers program. The summer experience is a way to get really deeply involved in the science that is here and be able to start to define what might be what you want to do next. So the brown bag gives our students a chance to explain their research and really show the context and the application of what they're doing to a very broad range of students and faculty.
It's interesting to be able to communicate to other scientists what your work is, and it forces you to learn how to talk about your subject so that not only experts in your field can understand it, but others can understand it as well, which I just believe is a good life skill.
To talk about your research in a way that anybody can understand it really is a valuable experience, and it's something that you don't get a lot of practice for except in these contexts. Because oftentimes you're giving a presentation to a classroom filled with people who know basically the same things that you do, but in a brown bag, you have to be able to explain and provide motivation for everything that you're working on and why it's important and why it's relevant to be studying.